A boy reincarnates as a noble in the world of his favorite video game with the most overpowered abilities, but his family exiles him and replaces him with a thick goth girl. This is the story of Elymas, a boy who died in his own world and was reincarnated without any memories as a character in a video game where your class defines your standing in society. There exists a class known as the Heavy Knight, a defense-focused role, essentially a tank, meant to draw enemy attacks toward itself during battle in order to protect its allies. Compared to other defensive classes, though, it isn't very versatile, since its weak offensive skills make leveling up difficult. As a result, it's widely regarded as an unfortunately flawed class. Several years have passed, and Elymas is about to undergo the ritual of the divine blessing as heir to the Edvon family. Among those present is his father, who tells him not to worry, since after all, he is his son. With that, the priest begins the ritual. A magic seal surrounds Elymas's body, and the priest calls out Baptisma, a divine spell that will grant our protagonist his class. Elymas, meanwhile, thinks that he's already experienced this before, though he tries to recall when, perhaps even before he was born. Then he remembers he had been obsessed with an online virtual reality game called Magic War, and this world is exactly like it. Realizing he has just been reincarnated, he assumes he'll come out on top this time around, since he already knows the game inside and out. All he hopes for now is the luck to get his favorite class considered the most broken one in the entire game. Just as he makes his wish, the ritual comes to an end. Elymas checks his stats and discovers he got exactly the class he wanted. Heavy Knight. Thrilled, he announces it to his father, who reacts with shock, asking if he perhaps means Swordmaster instead. Our protagonist doesn't understand why everyone around him is reacting this way. But then it hits him. The shock of his past life memories caused him to misunderstand how this realistic version of Magic World actually works. Here, simple, powerful classes that grow quickly in stats are praised and valued, while classes like Heavy Knight, which take far too long to develop, are looked down on, mainly because no one has properly tracked how these classes progress over time. Elymas grows nervous, but his father grabs his hand to confirm it for himself. Seeing the Heavy Knight class, he demands to know why his son ended up with something so pathetic. On top of that, his stats are low across the board, and none of his attacks stand out in any way, marking it as a defective class. Elymas asks him to calm down and tries to explain its advantages: enormous HP and defense that no other class can match. His father doesn't care in the slightest and strikes his son in disgust. Everyone present watches the scene in fear. The only small mercy is that it didn't happen in public, which would have been the family's greatest humiliation. Just then, footsteps approach the hall. A black-haired, red-eyed woman in armor walks in. Everyone remarks on how beautiful she is, though some wonder who she could be. We learn she's the daughter of a secondary branch of the Edvon family and a childhood friend of Elymas. Due to their difference in status, she and Elymas haven't spoken in 5 years, but now she has come to undergo her own divine blessing ritual, though this fills Elymas with a bad feeling. As the ritual begins, everyone falls silent, and once it's done, Malice checks her stats and finds she has received the Swordmaster class. This shocks everyone, especially when she apologizes to Elymas for having taken all of his talent for herself. His father immediately praises Malice for her class and declares that from this moment on, she will be his daughter and heir. To make matters worse, Malice laughs at Elymas, telling him he could never have handled the burden of being heir anyway. With that, the king orders Elymas to leave, declaring that he no longer considers him his son, since a Heavy Knight would only bring shame to the Edvon name. Everyone present sides with the king and Malice, praising his wise decision and leaving Elymas standing alone. He tries to reason with his father, explaining that his class could make him the strongest of them all, but his father won't listen, ordering him to get out and never show his face again, warning that if he ever speaks the family name again, he'll be beheaded. With that, he leaves with Malice, who keeps laughing in Elymas's face the whole way out, every bit the spoiled brat she is. Later, Elymas is thrown out of the mansion. The butler apologizes for not having done anything to help and hands him a few coins to get by, while Malice watches him go from the window, thoroughly pleased with herself. The scene shifts to the city of Rondalm, a place known for being packed with adventurers. Elsewhere, a small, upbeat jester is excited to take on some quests, though the other two members of her party, a redhead and a pale-haired woman, treat her with contempt, leaving her discouraged. Meanwhile, our protagonist arrives in the city. After renting a room, he sits on his bed thinking about what a piece of garbage his father is for putting him through hell. In the end, he lost his house, his family, and his old life. But looking on the bright side, he still has the Heavy Knight class, supposedly the strongest one in this world. With that thought, he takes a look around, realizing that this world's history, setting, and even its cities don't match the game at all. Because of this, he decides to investigate further. First, he decides to test out his class and abilities, checking his stats in hopes that Heavy Knight is still as broken here as it was in the game. He goes through each panel one by one, confirming everything is exactly the same. Next, he turns to the skill tree. It's explained that this determines which skill branches to invest in, and he currently has 5 skill points, the initial bonus points granted upon receiving a class, with 1 more gained per level. It's mentioned that it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that how you allocate these points determines your entire fate. There are 2 types of skills, fixed skills tied to each class, and skills assigned randomly when the character is created. Among his choices, Heavy Armor Oath is the only fixed skill, and it's considered the worst skill tree for the Heavy Knight. In truth, though, it's decently strong, just difficult to use, and many of its skills have limited applications. Defensive Reinforcement, meanwhile, is a fairly useful tree that grants no active skills but boosts defense. Finally, there's Basic Swordsmanship, which evolves into Advanced Swordsmanship with special equipment once fully maxed out. Without overthinking it, he puts all 5 skill points into Heavy Armor Oath, immediately leveling up that tree and gaining 10 extra defense points along with a new skill, Wall Reflex. Elamos is thrilled, convinced everything will work out. The scene shifts again, showing him fully equipped at the entrance to a forest, ready to begin his life as a knight, and after walking for several minutes, comes across a beautiful, calming lake. After taking in the view for a moment, he continues along the forest's various paths until he suddenly hears something rustling in the bushes. A frog jumps out. When he spots it, Elimas checks its stats, but the frog immediately lunges to attack. He draws his sword to prepare, but doesn't end up needing it, instead using his skill Wall Reflex, a barrier that both defends him and strikes back at the frog, finishing it off without any trouble. This levels him up from level 1 to level 2. It's explained that Wall Reflex is a common skill. It nullifies any enemy attack as long as it's melee, and deals damage equal to the user's defense stat. From the frog, he gets a level 2 magic stone. It's not worth much, but he keeps it just in case, until he hears someone calling for help. Elimus rushes toward the sound and quickly runs into the adventurer, also noticing that the forest is swarming with frogs. Elimus tells him he'll handle it. The fleeing adventurer, begging for his life, asks if he's really sure he can take them all on. Even imagining Elimas must be some famous figure given how confident he seems. Elimas answers that he's not, in fact admitting that he only leveled up for the very first time today. Hearing this drains what little hope the adventurer had left after all. How could you trust your life to someone clearly weaker than you? It makes no sense to him that a total beginner could take down so many monsters, and he doubts even that heavy armor will be enough to protect Elimas from all of them. Elimus, for his part, stays completely calm. He explains that Wall Reflex isn't a perfect skill. The damage the wall deals when defending is equal to the user's own defense stat. So your defense absolutely has to be higher than the enemy's attack power for it to work. Otherwise, the wall's effect won't trigger, and you'll be left exposed. He notes that Wall Reflex can be unreliable and dangerous against very powerful or unfamiliar enemies. But since he's a reincarnator from the game, he already knows every creature in it. Remarkably, Wall Reflex cancels out the attacks of frog after frog, taking them down one by one. It turns out that thanks to his game knowledge, he had prepared in advance, boosting his defense through gear and tree bonuses, allowing him to now take on dozens of frogs at once. All of them fall before his powerful wall, leaving the adventurer stunned, unable to believe what he's seeing. He asks how Elimus managed to defeat so many frogs, and just who exactly he is. Elimus starts to answer with his name, but stops himself before giving his family name, remembering the warning that speaking it again would cost him his head. So instead, he simply says his name is Elimus, the Heavy Knight. The instant every frog vanishes, Elimus's level jumps from 0 to 8, and he also earns the title of Unshakable. Checking his stats, he confirms the system works just like the one in Magic World. The adventurer he had rescued introduces himself as Aris and shares his story. He'd been told that if he couldn't reach level 3 on his own, no party would accept him, so he's deeply grateful for the help. Elimus brushes off the thanks, since he leveled up too, though he does intend to keep the magic stones for himself, which Aris is fine with. Aris then asks if Elimas would consider forming a party with him, since both of them are low level, and nobody wants to trust them with solo missions, Aris's own defense-oriented class, making him even less desirable as a partner. This brings back memories of how he reacted upon learning Elimus's class, but Aris sees him as amazing, and is confident they'd make a great team, promising to change everyone else's minds too. Still, Elimus would rather continue alone. Aris doesn't quite understand this, since it's obvious that a defense class would make solo leveling nearly impossible. Elimus doesn't really listen though. He apologizes and admits Aris has a point. He explains that defensive classes tend to shine by drawing enemy attacks and shielding allies, but dragging a group along means splitting experience, something that doesn't suit him, since he also wants to collect items, skills, and titles. Besides, he has no time to waste babysitting anyone. With that, Elymas continues on his way while Aris tries to talk him into changing his mind, only to be ignored until Elymas suddenly stops and turns around. A confused Aris looks up and notices something strange lurking above them. Suddenly, a giant spider drops from the trees and charges at them. Aris collapses to the ground, frozen with fear. Elymas checks its stats and discovers it's an Arveep, a monster with double his current level, putting him at a clear disadvantage in both level and abilities, especially against its slowing poison and flaming claw attack. Elymas considers different ways to neutralize it, but concludes none of his defensive options will really help. Rotten luck. Still, Aris gets back up and, despite his fear, offers to buy time. Noticing this, Elymas reassures him and moves toward the monster. With Aris shouting encouragement, Elymas opens his stats and invests the points he's earned into his branch, gaining the disarm skill, which temporarily reduces an enemy's attack by 20% on a successful hit. The fight begins as the spider lunges at him, but Elymas dodges. The spider then starts rolling, bouncing off the trees before slamming its legs down. Elymas evades again, and while blocking and deflecting each attack, notes that he's already read its attack patterns and range, so it won't get the better of him so easily. The spider slams a leg into the ground, forming a magic circle, then prepares a second spell from above and fires a poison beam at him. Rather than dodge, Elymas decides to tank the hit like a proper tank should. The spider's blast pushes him back slightly, but in that same moment, Elymas lands a disarm, slicing one of its eyes. The cut itself does no real damage, but it should weaken its attack. Enraged, the spider readies its flaming claw strike. Aris screams for Elymas to dodge, but it's too late. Elymas stands completely still and takes the hit head-on. Aris watches in despair, certain it's over. But as the smoke clears, Elymas walks out completely unscathed. He explains that the poison beam cost the spider 7 mana points, the flaming claw another 5, leaving it with only 4 mana remaining, meaning it can now only fight in melee. It tries to attack, but Elymas lands a second disarm, cutting it again and reducing its attack by 40% total. Meanwhile, his unshakable trait boosts his defense by 10% for holding his ground, evening the odds further. Despite the steep level gap at the start, Elymas overcame it through pure knowledge and strategy. His next move is to create distance, plant himself firmly, wait for the spider to attack, and use Wall Reflect to secure the win. Having defeated it, his level jumps from 8 to 12. The system informs him he can't add more points to Heavy Armor Oath. For now, though, it automatically levels up to 15, granting him the Repel skill. With that, he's finally unlocked all of his basic skills, which makes one wonder just how strong his ultimate will be. Aris again asks just what exactly Elymas is, having just watched him solo a spider that outclassed him. Unfortunately, poor Elymas ends up poisoned from the fight, so Aris helps him back to the city. Once there, the two part ways. Elymas goes to rest, but nightmares of his father plague him, and he wakes up remembering how Malice once looked down on him. The next day, Elymas heads to the Rondalm Adventurers Guild to register as an adventurer. Inside, we see him getting in line to sign up, with other adventurers nearby overhearing him. One of them laughs upon learning he's a heavy knight, but Elymas ignores it. Once his registration is complete, it's explained that there are 7 adventurer ranks, from F up to S, and reaching dungeon-eligible status requires rank E. It's also explained that his rank limits how many points he can invest into his class branch, so he plans to rank up as quickly as possible. The other adventurers laugh, assuming he's looking for a party. The receptionist, a bit awkwardly, explains that not many groups are looking for a squire, so it might take some time to find him one. Elymas reassures her and pulls out a magic bag, asking to exchange his magic stones. Seeing the sheer quantity and rarity of the stones, everyone in the guild is stunned. Quickly assuming he must be cheating, somehow Elymas simply ignores them, and with funds now secured for his new adventuring life, he feels ready to begin. First, he asks the receptionist if there are any rank-up quests available, and she hesitantly confirms there are. The scene shifts to a cemetery where a group of adventurers has gathered, Elymas among them, along with an old bearded man who, upon seeing him, questions whether he really beat an Arveep and decides to teach him a lesson that night. Elymas, overhearing everything, stays silent, holding back laughter and thinking he really can't seem to catch a break. Elymas explains that an assault mission is a rare chance to rank up, and he's simply grateful to be allowed to help. That's good enough for the old man, Gauton, who gets everyone moving. The hat-wearing mage, Till, uses his detection magic to scan the area for creatures and reports a horde of 30 enemies, hoping this skill will finally earn him his promotion to rank E. He then turns to Elymas, mentioning that his behavior has sparked several rumors around the guild. Elymas listens, but only to analyze Till's class. Till is a red mage with solid physical stats, capable of learning both offensive and healing spells. Till laments Elymas's class choice, to which Elymas replies that he's proud of what he is, making Till visibly uncomfortable. Yeah, they don't know yet. Illimus adds that red mages are notoriously hard to manage. They seem capable of everything, but back in the game they were heavily overshadowed. Naturally, though, people in this world tend to prefer easier, more straightforward classes. After this, Gauten runs through the mission briefing. The horde of undead is led by a necrophage head. Since Gauten is rank D, he'll handle it personally, but everyone else needs to watch their own backs. This worries the group, since the head is around level 30 and its breath can revive corpses, though Gauten himself is around level 40, so he should win. Still, rookies who might panic under a leader who won't be watching over them could be a real problem, putting their overall survival odds at around 80%. Because of this, Ellimus asks Gauten for clearer instructions. Since they can't just blindly trust the mission report, if something unexpected happens, it'll already be too late. Gauten bristles at being told what to do, but Ellimus speaks for the whole group, saying they don't trust their own low levels and need guidance. Grumbling, the bald man agrees at that point, though the blonde guy steps in and tells Ellimus that only broken, defective classes like his actually need that kind of hand-holding. The other adventurers stay quiet, but murmur among themselves that they needed the instructions too, right? As that guy is mocking Ellimus, both he and Gauten notice something off. Sure enough, the undead begin to emerge, and mid-sentence Gauten shouts for everyone to get up and clear a path alongside Paul. Meanwhile, Illimus studies the situation and the giant monster, ordering the other adventurers to handle the head's undead followers. They flatly refuse, worried they'll get surrounded and killed. The Heavy Knight sympathizes. None of them have ever faced a horde like this, let alone terrifying undead without any real instructions. As the zombies keep pouring in, Illimus orders them to form teams of 3 so they can watch each other's backs. They agree, but ask what he plans to do. Illimus says he'll pull the zombies' attention until they can regroup. One of them doubts he can manage that alone, being a slow Heavy Knight. Just then, an undead appears behind him with unsettling speed. It reaches him and tries to attack alongside others, rushing him at once, but one by one, Illimus repels and disarms them. He follows up with Wall Reflect, sending the zombies flying. He tells the group not to worry, he'll keep drawing the undead's attention, but to alert everyone immediately if anything unexpected happens. He continues clearing zombies, and the rookies watch in awe as he single-handedly takes on the horde, leveling up to 16 in the process. Confident in his use of Repel, Illimus finds fighting them highly efficient. Checking his stats confirms how fast he's leveling, and his skill is so impressive that the rookies end up more afraid of him than of the zombies themselves. Inspired, the rookies start fighting too and clear out most of the horde. They ask Illimus if they should go help Gauten, but he's not that reckless. He knows the head is far above their level and trusts Gauten to handle it. Cutting to Gauten's fight, the head can only fight in melee, and Gauten sweeps it across the cemetery before landing a solid axe strike. The head crumples to the ground, then lets out a scream that raises more undead. Gauten orders Till and Paul to draw the zombies' attention, but they hesitate like cowards, though their fear is really about getting caught up in Gauten's fight. Meanwhile, Gauten dodges an attack from the head, then rushes in and uses Rockbreaker on it, making the creature writhe in pain. Illimus checks its stats and realizes just one more hit should finish it off, but the zombies start closing in around Gauten. One of the adventurers asks if they should attack the zombies, and Illimus says no. Right then, they watch the head devour the zombies indiscriminately. Checking stats again, Illimus sees the monster's health regenerating, realizing it has a corpse consumption skill. Extremely rare for a necrophage head, but something feels off since it shouldn't need to eat that many undead just to heal. At that moment, the head rises and unleashes a powerful roar. Seeing Gauten charge in for the attack, Illimus screams for him to back off, but the ponytailed old man doesn't listen. Just as he's about to reach the head, it releases a burst of energy. Its body growing more muscular, signaling its evolution from necrophage head into a maddened head. Yeah, things just got a lot worse. Everyone is stunned, while Illimus scrambles to figure out what to do. It's explained that evolution is a rare phenomenon that occurs under specific conditions, mainly involving monsters, awakening dormant abilities, and transforming into new species to escape dangerous situations. Something practically unheard of in Magic World. So all Illimus can conclude is that they got extremely unlucky. Realizing the danger, he shouts for Gauten to get clear, but the old man doesn't have time, and takes the monster's breath attack head-on. Seeing this, Illimus orders Till to distract the creature. Till freezes in terror, protesting that attacking it will get him killed. Illimus reminds him that if Gauten falls, they're all finished, right? Then, Gauten takes a massive hit that sends him flying, and the paralysis from the breath attack intensifies. Pinned to the ground and unable to move, he watches the monster close in, preparing to finish him off. Before it can land the blow, Illimus rushes in and blocks the attack. Ordering Till to get Gauten and cure his paralysis, Till shouts back that he can't. Instead of unlocking that skill, he chose to upgrade his attack power. Illimus is understandably disappointed by Till's garbage build, but tells him to get Gauten somewhere safe to heal, regardless. With that handled, Illimus starts studying the monster and its abilities, concluding he just needs to hold out until Gauten can rejoin the fight. Without hesitation, he draws the monster's attention and readies himself. The other adventurers watch in disbelief, since he's still technically just a rank F adventurer. One of them, assuming he's doomed, tells the others they need to run. Back with Elymas, hearing them flee actually relieves him, since now he won't have to protect anyone else. At that moment, the head lets out another powerful roar, reminding Elymas that a single mistake here means death. The head bulks up further and swings a fist at him. He dodges with a jump, retreats, then sprints off across the cemetery, the head chasing immediately behind. It stops abruptly when he vanishes from sight. Scanning the cemetery, it sees no one, but Elymas is sprinting behind the gravestones. The head tracks him with its eyes, refusing to lose sight of him. Elymas throws a rock as a distraction. The head turns toward the noise, and he darts out to strike from behind. The head reacts instantly and swings at him. He barely escapes with a jump and readies his guard, but the head has vanished again. He scans around, focusing to locate it, only for it to burst up from the ground right behind him. He turns just in time, but this time the head connects, sending him bouncing across the ground and crashing through several gravestones. Everyone watching admits the level gap is genuinely terrifying. Elymas drops to his knees, propping himself up with his sword. Under any other circumstances, he'd have avoided this fight entirely. But now, he has to take the risk to win and survive, and despite the fear, the thrill of pushing his limits actually excites him. Getting back up, he immediately charges forward, cracking the ground beneath him. One adventurer wonders aloud whether a heavy knight could possibly keep pace with a monster like this. His companion calls it ridiculous, certain the miracle will end sooner or later. Elymas attacks and dodges but can't land a real hit. More than anyone, he knows the head could land a devastating blow at any moment, and he needs to counter before that happens. With that in mind, he dumps all his points into leveling up basic swordsmanship to level 5, unlocking Precision Strike, a skill that lets him land a heavy blow against high defense targets. The fight resumes. The head attacks, but he guards with Repel, closes the distance, dodges around behind it, and lands a precision strike straight across its back. Everyone watches, stunned, as Elymas gauges the outcome and notices the monster growing even more enraged. He explains that Precision Strike trades sword range for raw damage, which is why it's usually considered a weak skill, but for a high defense, low damage class like his, it's actually quite useful, though still not enough to take this creature down alone. He keeps attacking and repelling as the head grows increasingly feral. But that's where his turn ends, because Gauton, having healed up, reappears and finishes the head off with his Dragon Slayer slash. The adventurers cheer the victory, while Elymas sighs in relief, jumping 7 levels in the process. Gauton, for his part, reflects on how unusual it is to see a rank F adventurer survive a monster of that caliber. Elymas thanks Gauton for saving them, but the old man stays quiet for a moment before apologizing for his own incompetence. As thanks, he offers Elymas the monster's entire drop. Looking at the magic stone, Elymas assumes it's worth a fortune and asks Gauton if he's sure. Gauton confirms it, though. He pauses thoughtfully when he sees the shield. The monster dropped. Elymas asks if he wants it instead. Gauton declines, reaffirming his decision to hand everything over, though he can't resist checking the item's description. Reviewing it, Elymas discovers it can block attacks and boost the power of his next strike, and that it's worth 3 million gold. Catching the bald man's attention later, Elymas talks to Gauton about his promotion. The old man reassures him, promising he'll tell the guild to rank him up, and that anyone who objects will get a good beating. Yeah, this old man doesn't mess around. At that point, Till approaches, asking about his own promotion. Gauton's attitude shifts entirely, calling out how cowardly Till was for freezing up in fear. Disappointed, he orders Till to go complete more missions. Defeated, Till slinks off, but not before glancing back at Elymas. Dawn breaks, and the group heads back to the city and the guild. The receptionist hands out the mission rewards. First a bag containing 130,000 gold, then another with 200,000 for the 10 magic stones, and finally an additional 600,000 coins for the stone from the evolved necrophage head. Seeing that total, the other adventurers are floored. The old man laughs, congratulating Elymas on such a haul. Hearing this, the other adventurers start questioning whether the heavy knight somehow cheated. Even the receptionist asks Gauton to confirm everything's legitimate. Elymas simply ignores the comments, but Gauton loses his patience, slamming the table and shouting at everyone, demanding to know if they're questioning his judgment on approving the promotion. Afterward, they leave the guild, and Elymas thanks Gauton for all his support. The old man accepts the thanks and heads off without much else to say, now free. Elymas considers what to do next now that he's reached rank E. He could head into dungeons to earn more gold, but notes that Wall Reflect scales with defense and is really only strong early on. So for now, he should focus on leveling up. But if he truly wants to become strong, he needs to track down the grimoire known as Fang of Latent Madness. Grimoires help unlock powerful skills, but are notoriously hard to find, though well worth the effort. If he could combine his heavy armor oath with that grimoire, both would max out his defensive class, transforming the heavy knight from a mere shield into a human weapon. That grimoire, Fang of Latent Madness, is the key to unlocking his class's full potential. As Elymas continues on his way, he begins searching the city for his grimoire, stepping into a shop for adventuring supplies lined with shelves of potions and other gear. He buys 3 healing potions for 72,000 gold, a price far steeper than in the game. While there, he asks the shopkeeper where he might buy grimoires, since he hasn't come across a single store selling them so far. He mentions that without that grimoire, continuing to fight with his class would basically mean playing through a tutorial forever. The shopkeeper looks at him confused and asks if he only recently got his class, explaining that buying and selling grimoires is actually illegal. While people are allowed to use any grimoire they acquire, the Adventurers Guild is required to hand all recovered ones over to the nobility and the church. This crushes Elimas, since grimoires are already hard enough to find as it is, and it would only make sense for someone to sell them in the game. Nobles were important too, but here they've taken it to an absurd level by banning sales outright, which makes it far more likely that a noble family, Edbach, monopolizes the rarest grimoires, meaning he'll probably never get his hands on one. Taking pity on him, the shopkeeper gives him the address of a store that deals in loot stripped from corpses. The guild knows these shops exist, but looks the other way as part of some arrangement. What's more, a fallen adventurer's belongings don't go to their family. They're sent straight to the nobles, who pay next to nothing for a grimoire that costs someone their life. Ilimas feels sick hearing this. Before he leaves, the shopkeeper asks him not to tell anyone she gave him that information. Leaving Ilimas even more determined never to mention he's technically noble himself, he crosses the entire city until he finally reaches the shop. Walking in, he's hit with thick, suffocating smoke, but after looking around, he confirms the place does have grimoires. Out of nowhere, an old woman appears and tells him to leave, making it clear the broken grimoire shop isn't meant for novices like him, though she does let him browse the ones on the shelves anyway. Ilimas picks up a basic archer grimoire and, checking it over, finds it costs 2,500,000, far more than in the game. He realizes prices have skyrocketed because the nobles have been hoarding them. The old woman mentions she sells this one for 3 million, which stuns him, but she explains the price reflects the risk involved in acquiring it. He briefly considers selling his demonic shield, though he doubts it would cover a grimoire this rare. Yeah, he's basically broke, but it's not the end of the world. After going through nearly every grimoire in the shop, he finds one that's essential to his class's skill tree. Excited, he approaches the old woman and asks the price. She names 50 million, leaving his jaw on the floor. With no other option, he asks her to hold it for him until he can come back with the money. She agrees without hesitation, but demands an extra 5 million on top. Back out on the street, Ilimas tries to figure out how to raise that kind of money, since it's roughly 60 times what he earned from the headhunting mission. He notes that the only people who'd even want the Fang of Latent Madness are heavy knights and death-defying combat addicts. And given how rare it is, the price is absurd. His first option is farming rare chests in dungeons, but that means constantly fighting enemies, which isn't exactly a heavy knight's strength. His second option is grinding weak monsters, but that would take way too long. Other options include improving his swordsmanship or picking up grimoires that develop his skills further, but those would become worthless once he gets his hands on the real grimoire, effectively wasting his points and leaving him even more frustrated. He also considers that heavy knights aren't in high demand, but after the headhunting mission, word may have spread and someone might actually want to team up with him. Right then, he overhears an adventurer bragging about finding a bloodstained sword, which he plans to sell for 2 million. Within that adventurer's party is a jester. Without her, they wouldn't have gotten the sword in the first place, though the other two members are ignoring her entirely. Ilimas identifies each of their classes: a swordsman, a thief, and the jester as a Pierrot. The swordsman cuts in, reminding her that the sword only dropped after countless dungeon runs, so he doubts it had anything to do with her. The jester concedes the point somewhat, but asks that they keep running more dungeons so they can see just how much she's actually helped. The swordsman, however, tells her she's out of the group and won't be getting paid. The jester goes pale, pointing out that just like them, she risked her life fighting on the front lines, asking that they at least give her a tenth of the earnings. The swordsman considers it, then says that even if she takes risks, her attacks don't actually do anything. She just scatters a few hits and nothing more, dismissing her as dead weight. On the verge of tears, she counters that if she doesn't have more skills, it's because she distributed her points exactly the way he told her to. She asks if he doesn't think it's a little cruel to say that now, after they've made money off the loot. The swordsman steps closer and coldly tells her that her only real problem is dragging down his share with how useless she is. He adds that his suggestions were just that, suggestions. He never forced her to allocate her skill points that way, so he can't believe she's now demanding payment for contributing nothing. Ilimas, listening closely, notes that bad builds and arguments like this were common back in Magic World, since even if you allocated skill points to support your party, any changes down the line could make those choices meaningless. At that point, Klein throws 100,000 coins at her and tells her to get lost, saying he doesn't want to look at someone so pathetic anymore. Despite everything, the Pierrot apologizes to them, but he doesn't accept it, simply wishing her luck finding her next group. Having overheard the whole exchange, Ilimas starts wondering about the skill tree the Pierrot had been building. He recalls her mentioning that her skills were what let them get that bloodstained sword in the first place. Thinking it over more seriously, he wonders if she might actually have the exact tree he suspects. because if so, it would be absurdly overpowered. Realizing this, he chases after the Pierrot and with an unmistakably creepy grin, asks her to form a party with him, leaving both her and her former teammates completely stunned, offering an 80-20 split of earnings. Rusha assumes the 20% must be for her and protests it's too little, even though she'd been begging for just 10% before. Ilimas clarifies that the 20% is for him and the 80% goes to her. Her ex-teammate scoffs, calling this nonsense, but before the negotiation goes any further, Rusha timidly asks Ilimas if he could let go of her hand. Right then, the swordsman cuts in, demanding to know who the hell Ilimas even is. Ilimas introduces himself and explains that he overheard their whole argument about kicking Rusha out, and since she's free now, he wants to recruit her. The swordsman laughs it off, calling him crazy, pointing out that Rusha is terrible in combat and can't level up the normal way. None of that matters to Ilimas, since he already knows the other advantages she brings. Irritated by his stubbornness, the swordsman says, fine, he can keep her. Rusha was never anything but dead weight for the team anyway. Ilimas replies that he doesn't need anyone's permission to take her with him. This angers the swordsman, making both Rusha and the thief visibly nervous about what might happen next. The swordsman steps up, standing right in front of Ilimas, and points his sword at him, demanding to know his level, and whether he's already with the group. Ilimas answers firmly, a level 23, rank E heavy knight, no group. Given that level, the swordsman assumes Ilimas must have real experience, which should mean he already knows exactly how useless Rusha is, especially at only level 13. Ilimas repeats that he doesn't care. The thief, Reese, calls Klein over, pointing out how strange it is for a rank E to want someone like Rusha, suspecting she might have skills they simply never noticed. The swordsman still doubts she's useful, and doesn't believe a heavy knight could reach that level without a party, figuring it's probably safest to just hand her off to someone else so no one suspects they dumped her. In this touching moment, Klein sarcastically applauds Rusha on her new group, then kicks the coins on the ground toward her, calling it her farewell gift. The Pierrot reaches to grab them, but Ilimas stops her, turning to Klein and telling him to pick them back up himself since it's rude to leave coins scattered like that, and calling it a gift is a bad joke anyway. He then tells Rusha they should get going. She hesitates since it really is a lot of money, but Ilimas advises against taking it, since it would leave her owing a favor to trash like them. This irritates Klein, who simply sends them off with a string of insults. As our protagonists walk away, Klein is about to leave too, but Reese asks if she can keep the coin. Klein immediately spins around, scoops every single one back up, and shouts that they're his. After all this, Ilimas and Rusha head to a restaurant there. The Pierrot takes the opportunity to thank him again, and asks whether the real reason he defended her was because he'd fallen for her. She admits she's been thinking it over, and after a while concluded he must have fallen for her at first sight, since she can't think of any other reason someone so strong would take interest in her. Caught up in her own fantasy about their possible romance, she suggests they could start off as friends and take things further. From there, Ilimas cuts her off, asking bluntly whether she has the Great Fortune's skill tree. This leaves the Pierrot completely confused. Unsure how to respond, the scene shifts to the forest. Ilimas explains that in Magic World, dungeons are the nightmares of Alxeres, the sleeping god of creation, a being who spent an eternity creating countless gods and worlds out of nothing, but eventually lost his mind and was sealed away by the very gods he'd created. Ever since, his nightmares have bled into reality, forming portals that spawn monsters and other aberrant creatures. While Rusha is still processing all this, they arrive at a dungeon entrance, and she grows visibly nervous. She pulls up her stats and asks if he really wants her in his group. Being honest, she asks him to drop her as soon as possible, not wanting to build up false hope only to end up disappointing him, showing off her dice thrust skill. She admits she can't even land the maximum bonus on her attacks, regretting not choosing reckless acrobatics or investing points into offensive reinforcement instead. Ilimas tells her it's not an issue. He repeats that he needs her specifically. Nervous, Rusha asks what he even means, since she's terrible at reading between the lines, and won't understand unless he spells it out. So he does. They're going to earn 30 million gold, and he's going to get her all the way up to level 30, which only confuses her further. With that, they step onto the dungeon portal and are transported elsewhere. The recommended level for this dungeon is 50, but Ilimas already knows exactly which monsters they'll run into as they progress. He explains they won't be putting themselves in any real danger. They'll simply work through the early floors until they've leveled up enough. The plan is for Ilimas to draw the monster's attention while Rusha attacks from range with her iron-piercing knife. Trying not to second-guess herself, she accepts the fairly expensive knife Ilimas buys her, worth 550,000 gold on the market, boosting attack by +3, with the added effect of reducing enemy defense by 15% on hit. Feeling confident now, Rusha resolves to do whatever it takes so Ilimas won't regret bringing her along. As they push forward, Ilimas spots something plush looking slowly approaching in the distance, a patched-up bear level 20 with 41 HP and 17 magic. Rusha says it looks huggable, but seeing its level kills that urge instantly. Ilimas notes Rusha can probably survive 2 hits, but a critical hit could kill her, though he could interrupt the attack by breaking its balance beforehand. She asks how he knows so much about this and whether he just really likes bears. He answers, somewhat pained, that that's not it at all. The fight begins. He'll handle blocking its attacks while Roosh strikes its blind spots, though she needs to stay alert for its claws and fangs. With that laid out, they get into position. LMS uses Shadow Grip to pin the bear in place. Roosh moves in, not quite registering the danger, feeling a little sorry for it, right as the bear suddenly transforms and lunges at Ilimas. He neutralizes it with ease and tells her to finish the job. Roosh goes all out and takes the monster down, but panics when it doesn't drop anything, immediately worried she'll get kicked out of the group. Ilimas reassures her, explaining they only killed it for the experience, and that they'll be doing plenty more of that. Right on cue, another cuddly little bear appears, and they continue exploring. After a few more bears, two of them drop Bear Shield. Overjoyed, Roosh asks if he's glad he brought her along. Ilimas says yes and tells her they'll take the shields, though privately, he can't help but find the drop rate unusually high, since loot like that doesn't normally show up so often. Then he remembers her special cat's paw skill boosts luck by 500%, so it's not entirely out of the question. Still, he can't believe how oblivious Klein must have been not to notice that the whole time, assuming he'd just gotten used to an unusually high drop rate. Once again, Roosh asks if she's actually helping. Ilimas confirms she is, and thanks her for teaming up with him. She asks if he wants more bear shields that badly, since they could grab 8 more if so. Ilimas calms her down, saying she's already leveled up plenty. Checking her stats, Roosh sees she's reached level 20. Ilimas congratulates her and tells her their next target is hunting a golden frog. Roosh is left pondering just how lofty Ilimas's goal sounds, while he explains that frogs were the very first monsters he took down after he was exiled. Frogs are the most common monsters around, making them extremely weak and among the most well-known creatures in Magic World. Plenty of variants exist, but their real target is the golden one, given where they're at. For now, they'll just farm whatever this dungeon offers. Even though the golden frog is notoriously hard to find, the time spent hunting it is worth it, since it usually drops incredibly valuable items. Another advantage is that its attack and magic stats are extremely low despite its high level, and to make things even easier, it has no offensive skills whatsoever, meaning it can't fight back at all. In other words, it's essentially defenseless in combat, if not outright unable to fight. Even so, the experience and loot it drops are valuable enough that this monster is truly one of a kind. Ilimas also mentions there are several special monsters similar to this frog that players affectionately nicknamed Golden Toads back in Magic World. For a lot of players, hunting them down was actually one of the most fun parts of the game. For Ilimas specifically, tracking one down should be fairly easy, since they tend to appear on the mid-level floors of the Angel's toy box, and he already knows every monster that can spawn on this floor. Roosh interrupts to mention she's also heard of golden frogs, including a rumor that a single one could set someone up for life. She heard this in an adventurer's bar along with something else, that they're nearly impossible to catch because of how fast they flee, and that even if you manage to hit one, it doesn't seem to take any damage at all. Sometimes people chase them from a distance, only to end up surrounded by other monsters instead. So it's likely plenty of adventurers have died trying to hunt them. Hearing this, LMS is reminded of something important. This world isn't like the game. If someone dies here, they don't respawn. That's why most people prioritize survival and avoid the risk of chasing the frog altogether, even though the frog can't defend itself. Its speed and defense stats are absurdly high, and it's completely immune to elemental attacks, status effects, and any negative effects, basically indestructible. With all that in mind, Roosh asks what they could possibly do about it. She recalls that her knife is effective against high defense monsters, but even that wouldn't be enough to so much as make the frog limp, adding that its speed alone would make it impossible to even get close. Ilimas agrees. The frog's speed sits at 67 points and its defense at 200, meaning the knife's 15% bonus penetration wouldn't do a thing. Even though Roosh's Pierrot class is fast, the frog is still twice as fast as her and 3 times faster than Ilimas. Not even his wall reflect would land a single point of damage. Giving all this, Roosh asks if he really thinks this is possible. Ilimas tells her not to worry, since he already has a plan. The frog's extreme defense is actually its weak point. She asks if he genuinely has some attack that could hurt it. He simply smiles and tells her he's counting on her. She asks, surprised, if she's really the one who'll handle this. He confirms it. After all, she should have 8 new skill points from leveling up just now, which he wants her to put into the Reckless Acrobatics branch, unlocking 2 skills that are key to his strategy. Roosh thanks him for having so much faith in her, but doubts she can actually pull it off. Right as she says this, a gift box monster leaps toward them. Ilimas reacts instantly, repelling the attack. He immediately tells Roosh to run. She asks if they shouldn't finish it off instead. Ilimas says no, it's not their target, and fighting it would just draw in more of the same monsters. As they retreat, Roosh asks if they're really only going to focus on the golden frog, since with their skills and knowledge, they could easily take down other monsters to level up too. Illimus explains that hunting golden frogs is genuinely their best option at their current level, at least once they're sure nothing's still chasing them. He admits he already expected they wouldn't find one right away, but he's confident that if they search all day, they might find as many as two. Roosh is stunned hearing this, unable to believe just how rare they really are. Illimus assures her they're worth every bit of the time and effort, but tells her not to hesitate to speak up if she starts feeling overwhelmed or frustrated. She reassures him she was just asking out of curiosity, then declares with determination that they'll hunt 1,000 golden frogs. Yeah, as if that were even possible. Just as she says this, she spots a golden frog. Illimus is genuinely stunned they found one so soon, since it was supposed to be far harder than this. Nervous, Roosh turns to him and, struggling to get the words out, tells him they found one. He calms her down, reminding her they need to stay composed if they want to win this. She starts taking slow breaths in and out. Illimus reminds her that she used her 10 points to bring Reckless Acrobatics up to level 10, unlocking the 2 skills essential to their win. In his plan, he'll be waiting for the golden frog to turn around. But it's up to Roosh to make it turn toward him, meaning everything hinges on her, which only ramps up the poor jester's stress to help her settle down. Illimus tells her it's fine even if she messes up. She takes another breath and mentally locks in on her role. We learn that the golden frog can sense enemies within 4 meters, and this dungeon's corridors happen to be exactly 4 meters wide, making it impossible to flank around. But there's a key detail. The frog can only detect you if you're walking on the ground. This is where Roosh comes in. Using her acrobatic footwork, she's able to run along the walls and ceiling, dropping down from above to land right in front of the frog. Startled, it tries to flee forward, but Roosh blocks its path with duplicate illusion, summoning 4 clones of herself. Since the corridor is narrow, the frog has nowhere to run and can't handle facing 4 opponents at once. While the frog is technically immune to blindness or hallucination effects, duplicate illusion slips past that immunity. Since it doesn't directly affect the frog itself, it just confuses it, making it unable to tell which one is real. This exposes the frog's true weak point, cowardice, and it's exactly what makes Illimus's shadow grip work against it. But everything hinges on whether he can actually land it, given his low speed. His shadow only extends 50 centimeters, so to gain an edge, he pulls out a magic stone he got when buying Roosh's knife, which emits an intense light that stretches both their shadows, letting Illimus successfully pin the frog down. Roosh celebrates that they caught it, but immediately wonders how they're supposed to kill it. Illimus answers, critical hits, a perfect strike that deals nearly double normal damage and ignores 50% of the enemy's defense. Roosh assumes this means just attacking repeatedly until a critical lands, but her own hits don't do much damage, reassuring her again that he's counting on her. Illimus explains that landing critical hits requires both skill and luck, and right now he can't attempt any himself since he's stuck holding the frog in place. Roosh points out she hasn't landed a critical hit either. Illimus acknowledges that would be true with normal attacks, but she now has her signature skill, Dice Thrust. Hearing this, Roosh is reminded of Klein's dismissive words, which stings a little. To break it down further, Dice Thrust is, appropriately, a thrusting-type skill where a 6-sided die is rolled, granting an additional effect depending on the result. Remembering exactly how it works, both Roosh and Illimus get fired up, confident they can land a critical hit. As Roosh rolls the dice, Illimus explains that landing a 6 would multiply her attack by 1.3, guaranteeing a critical hit, bringing the total damage multiplier to 1.95 times normal. On top of that, the knife's 15% penetration stacks with the 50% penetration from the critical hit itself, meaning a roll of 6 would multiply her attack by 1.95 while reaching 65% total penetration. Despite all this, Roosh still questions whether it'll actually work. Illimus tells her that even a skill that only shines in very specific situations or takes time to prove its worth is never truly useless, and advises her not to let other people's opinions get to her. With that, he asks her to lend him her strength so they can keep moving forward as adventurers. Roosh finally makes up her mind, motivated by his words, and promises to give it everything she has so she won't let him down. With that, we watch her charge at the golden frog and use Dice Thrust, landing the maximum multiplier and scoring a critical hit. In a single strike, the frog collapses and drops its gems. Roosh freezes in disbelief, stunned that it actually worked. At the same moment, she levels up to 27. While Illimus reaches level 30, he congratulates her on taking down the frog, mentioning that experience isn't the only reward. There's also a 50% chance the monster drops an item upon death. Right then, the frog's body begins to dissolve. The two notice something unusual inside, and as Roosh steps closer to look, they see it's a weapon. A gleaming frog ornamental dagger, its description listing plus 12 attack and a market value of 17 million gold. Naturally, our protagonists erupt in excitement. thrilled that their very first kill dropped a gleaming frog ornamental dagger. Roosh stares in disbelief at the outrageously expensive item they just picked up, asking Elemis how it could possibly be worth 1.7 million. But he points out she miscounted and missed a zero. Recalculating, she realizes it's actually 17 million and nearly faints on the spot at such an absurd number, especially since she'd just been arguing over 2 million, and a discounted 2 million at that. Once she calms down, she still can't believe they landed an item like this on their very first attempt, and worriedly asks if carrying something this valuable makes them an easy target. She suggests they sell it immediately and run off somewhere far away to live in peace. Elemis laughs off her plan, though he privately agrees it's probably the smart move, but before leaving he wants to hunt one more. So they spend the next 3 hours with Roosh trying to land another critical hit. Finally, after several attempts, she gets it. Elemis is thrilled to have secured a second dagger, jumping from level 30 to level 33 in the process, but Roosh seems a bit off. Elemis assumes she's just frustrated it took so long to roll a 6, but really she's still processing the fact that they now have 34 million gold. Once they've got the dagger secured, they head out. Elemis mentions they should figure out how best to use all this money for the group. Roosh agrees, still mentally tallying up their earnings. They also start thinking about redistributing skill points. She mentions that with this second frog kill, she hit level 30 and pulls up her stats for Elemis to decide for her. He tells her she shouldn't just hand that kind of trust over so casually. She brushes it off, saying it's fine with him specifically. Since it was thanks to his help that she leveled up in the first place, she wouldn't even mind if he exploited her or kicked her from the group. Something Elemis obviously has no intention of taking advantage of. Then Roosh's expression shifts. She looks off to the side, saying she heard a voice. Turning, she asks Elemis if he heard a baby crying just now. He goes quiet for a few seconds before realizing what it must be. A wandering Roosh startles at the word. Elemis explains that a dungeon boss, or Waneric boss, has its heart normally hidden deep within the dungeon, but sometimes it wanders out into the rest of the dungeon. Rook panics, asking if the recommended level for this dungeon's Waneric boss wasn't 50, because if so, they're in serious trouble. Elemis reassures her that if they act carefully, they won't get pulled into it. They just need to move away from the voice and head straight for the exit, since the Waneric boss won't follow them outside. Relieved, Roosh agrees they've still got a shot. Elemis also tries to steady himself, convincing himself this is the simplest path and that they really can make it home safely. But right in that tense moment, they hear someone screaming for help. In the distance, 2 visibly injured adventurers are stumbling toward them. Roosh immediately rushes to help. Elemis, watching the scene unfold, silently admits to himself that he was naive to think this would play out like a game. With no other choice, he positions himself behind the injured pair and tells Roosh to get them out of the dungeon. This clearly isn't a game. These people's lives are genuinely at risk. Roosh asks if he's sure, since even he can't handle a level 50 Waneric boss alone. He reassures her, saying he understands the creature's nature well enough to buy them time. He also reminds her that drawing enemy attention is exactly what a heavy knight is built for. She hesitates over whether to listen right as the creature itself appears. Everyone freezes as the monstrous being approaches. Elemis takes up a defensive stance so Roosh can get the 2 adventurers out. They thank him and hurry off, but Roosh doesn't want to leave him behind. The tinfoil knight is level 40, its HP already at half, but its magic still full. Elemis is grateful for the small mercy of facing it at half health, which prompts Roosh to offer to help finish it together. He refuses, insisting she needs to escape, since this tinfoil knight isn't the actual Waneric boss of this dungeon, just one of its limbs. That means the boss's full body could arrive any moment, and right on cue, 2 more knights appear. Elemis promises he'll catch up once he's bought some time, but Roosh knows 3 level 40 monsters will be too much even for him, and insists on staying. With no time to argue, Elemis snaps at her to leave, since she'll only get in the way of the fight. Roosh apologizes and agrees to go, only asking that he not take too long. Left alone with the 3 monsters, he admits to himself that if it had only been these 3, he might have let the injured pair stay and help, but he couldn't risk that with an Waneric boss loose nearby, meaning what he told Roosh about bringing the injured out to escape was, in truth, a lie. A heavy knight's biggest weakness is his lack of speed. He might be able to outrun the 3 knights, since none of them attack at range, but escaping the actual Waneric boss would be impossible, given its magical attacks could easily catch him. That's when the Waneric boss itself appears, and Elemis plants his feet ready to take it down right there. This particular Waneric boss is an embryo level 50 with HP at 42 and magic at 60. For its level, those stats are surprisingly low, but the real problem with the embryo is that it's nearly impossible to damage. Its body's defense is absurdly high, and the only vulnerable point is its eye, which can only be hit with ranged attacks. Something Elemis doesn't have. Even so, this embryo has one major weakness that Elemis can exploit to win even fighting solo. He raises his heavy armor oath to level 27, unlocking a new skill, Shield Bash, provoking the embryo into engaging him. One of its guard knights charges at Elymas, but he responds with Shield Bash, slamming the toy-like creature into the wall. Shield Bash works by shoving enemies back with his shield, making it especially effective for splitting up a group. With that, he turns to the two remaining knights, using Repel on one and Disarm on the other. Glancing at the embryo, he confirms it won't attack directly or use magic as long as its allies are positioned between them, so he focuses on taking down the tinfoil knights first. He rushes one down, landing a disarm that forces it back. Counting the seconds since his first disarm, he confirms the activation conditions are still met. Right as the tinfoil knight charges again, he triggers Wall Reflect, finishing it off completely. With that obstacle cleared, he shifts his focus to the embryo, only for it to cast a healing spell, regenerating the remaining tinfoil knights. Seeing this, Elymas scrambles for a way to eliminate the embryo directly, realizing he can exploit the moment it casts magic to strike its eye. Obviously the most straightforward option. He pulls out a magic stone and hurls it at the embryo. It shatters mid-flight, and the fragments embed themselves right in its eye. This is the Earth Magic Stone skill unique to the patched-up bear. Having successfully distracted the embryo, Elymas tries to use the remaining tinfoil knight as cover to avoid its Sylphid Cut attack. But just as he's about to pull it off, the knight suddenly backs away. Tinfoil Knight had baited him. Clearly thrown off by this, Elymas wonders if these things are actually learning his patterns, recalling that in Magic World, ordinary creatures were never capable of adapting to Shield Bash like this. While he scrambles for a solution, the embryo finishes regenerating and immediately unleashes its Sylphid Cut skill. Elymas has no choice but to brace for the hit, but the attack's power overwhelms him completely. Collapsed on the ground, he feels his body refusing to respond, stunned by the impact. The tinfoil knights close in, and just as they're about to land the finishing blow, Elymas suddenly vanishes from the spot. It's Roosh, who's come back to save him. Roosh uses Duplicate Illusion again, prompting an irritated Elymas to ask, "What are you doing here?" But then he notices she's crying. She explains the path wasn't that long, so she left the two injured adventurers as far away as she safely could and came back to check on him, since he still hadn't shown up. She reminds him he promised to catch up right away and scolds him for still being stuck fighting here. Elymas apologizes but stubbornly tells her to leave anyway. But if he's stubborn, Rushi is even more so, planting herself beside him, knife ready to fight. Deep down, she still remembers the moment he saved her from humiliating herself over a handful of coins, and now here he is risking his life for her too, even after telling her he needed her strength. That's exactly why she can't just run and let him die after all. If she'd fled from every hardship, she'd have stopped being an adventurer a long time ago. The knights keep cutting down each illusion one by one, and time is running out. Elymas admits the one attack that had been working won't help anymore, and neither of them has anything that hits at range. But to Roosh, that's just an excuse. He's the only one who ever trusted someone as useless as her, and she wants him to keep counting on her. As the last illusions vanish, Elymas recalls that in all the time he's known Roosh, there's been no obstacle they haven't overcome together. So he asks for her strength one more time, and together they turn to face the embryo. Right then, one of the tinfoil knights charges at Roosh, but Elymas steps in first, blocking its attacks and giving her the opening to finish it off. Once again, though, the embryo uses its regeneration to repair the tinfoil knights. Roosh panics, saying it seems impossible to actually beat them. Elymas agrees completely, explaining that they need to take out the embryo itself, or this fight will never end. She asks if he has a plan. He does. They'll need to pierce it with her dice thrust, but if it fails, that's the end for both of them, so they'll have to bet everything on the odds of rolling a 6. He explains that the embryo's fleshy armor has 88 defense when its eyes are closed, meaning a critical hit from her thrust could easily punch straight through it, just like it did with the golden frog. Roosh asks how they'll even reach it up there, then remembers she can use her acrobatic footwork. Elymas rules that out since she'd become an easy target for its Sylphid Cut. Instead, he'll close the distance himself while she follows behind, and if it works, he'll use Shield Bash to launch her into the air. Despite the risks, Roosh agrees to the plan, promising she'll land a 6 no matter what. With nothing left to say, Elymas charges the tinfoil knights, keeping them occupied. Right after, Roosh leaps off his shield and, following the plan, is launched with full force toward the embryo. Elymas silently prays she rolls a 6 this time and doesn't repeat what happened with the second golden frog. Roosh channels her skill with total determination, but rolls a 4 instead, and the attack fails, sending her flying backward and crashing to the ground. Elymas refuses to accept the failure and immediately starts regretting having put Roosh's life on the line. Still, he has no intention of giving up while he's still breathing, and stands his ground against the knights so that at least Roosh can land safely without danger nearby. But then something unexpected happens. As Roosh hits the ground, she suddenly leaps again, and Ilimas watches as she activates her acrobatic footwork once more. She sprints across the ceiling, positioning herself directly behind the embryo, then drops down and lands her final thrust straight into its neck, rolling a 6 and piercing clean through the monster's head. Ilimas stares at her in awe as the embryo collapses lifelessly to the ground, and with it, all the remaining knights fall as well, jumping Roosh from level 31 all the way to 39, while Ilimas climbs from 33 to 41. Ilimas admits to himself that he made a real mistake here during the fight. All he could do was pray Roosh would get lucky enough to roll the 6 that would save them both, but even after everything seemed lost, she got back up and secured the victory entirely on her own. Rushi is still processing the fact that she just took down an Oniric boss. Nervously, she gets up and asks if he's being serious, explaining that surviving this dungeon has given her real confidence. She'd almost always been told her class was useless, but after everything they've accomplished together, she finally feels strong. Ilimas, however, gives her all the credit, thanking her not just for saving him, but for being who she is, joking that Klein lost someone truly incredible. He also admits that he himself had been judging people based on class and level, no different from his own father or from Klein, just applying different criteria for who he chose to associate with. But Roosh risked everything to save him, even while he was being stubborn, and through her own wit alone, saved them both. He describes her as loyal, grateful, and someone who rises to the occasion when it matters most, saying, "There's no one he trusts more than her." For this, she earns the title of underdog, granted for defeating an Oniric boss in a group while being at least 70% below the recommended level, boosting her attack and speed by 15% against higher-level opponents. He recalls that this title can only be earned by beating Oniric bosses at a low level, though he never imagined he'd actually witness it happen this soon. Just then, Roosh points out that the tinfoil knights dropped 2 swords. Ilimas checks them and finds they're worth 2.4 million gold combined. Once again stunned, he acknowledges just how enormous the advantages of the Great Fortune Tree really are, though he doubts many people would have the nerve to carry both bear shields and tinfoil swords out of a single dungeon run. With that, he wonders if the embryo itself dropped anything. He asks Roosh to check for a bow or something similar, but she doesn't recall seeing anything else. Right at that moment, an object materializes behind him. He approaches immediately and discovers it's an intermediate wind magic grimoire. He recalls just how brutally hard these are to find, and even more so, how absurdly expensive they've become thanks to the nobility hoarding them all, meaning he's now holding a genuine relic in his hands. Noticing how quiet he's gone, Roosh asks what's wrong, why he's hiding the item. Ilimas tells her it's nothing, just that they found something extraordinary. His first thought is selling it to the old woman at the shop. But as he's turning that over in his mind, the dungeon starts collapsing around them. Startled, Roosh asks what's happening now. Ilimas calms her, explaining the dungeon is breaking down because its Oniric boss has fallen and they'll be back outside any moment. Even so, she feels a lingering unease since this is all still new to her. At that point, Ilimas also mentions that they earned roughly 60 million gold today. Confused, Roosh asks what he means, and he explains it's just a rough estimate of the total value of everything they've collected. At that, Roosh collapses to the ground, completely drained and overwhelmed, scolding him for dropping something like that on her right now of all times. And that's it for today's episode. Comment the word luck to let me know you made it all the way to the end. Make sure to watch the full video because it really helps the channel grow. Give it a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. See you next time. Bye-bye.